Alamo Ria. I like that.
I'm glad that got corrected. Did you ask him to correct it? James probably did.
Yeah. Well, that's one good for James now. So let's start. The good is over here and the bad's over there. Yeah. You ready? Good morning, Houston. This is Pat Reisinger with the Massive Passive Dealers, right? Deal makers.
Deal makers.
Oh,
Yes.
deal makers. That's right, dealers. Okay, confusing us with the guys down in the corner.
You could say Alamo Ria too.
Oh, yeah, Alamo Ria. Well, we got to get used to that because we now have the Alamo Ria San Antonio. And we have the Alamo Ria Houston. And,
Right.
So for new listeners or anybody that's thinking like, what are these guys talking about? Is it our RIA is our real estate club, basically.
Right. And I grew up in the Rich Club. When I started when they had about 200 members, and then got back on the board when they had 2,000 members. And the thing I loved about the Rich Club, it's defunct now, but it was really about the members. It was really about the investors, and that's what with Alamo Ria that we're going to try to take off on and emulate that, because it really is about the members. You put the members first, and everything will take care of itself.
Yeah, you're right. And I tell you, I was introduced to the Rich Club in 2006 when I went to work for a hard money lending company as their construction manager and overseeing all their investors and making sure they're staying on track and keep them out of trouble. The lenders out of trouble.
Right.
Because they didn't really have anything in place to make sure that there was 30-year roofs and there was foundation, documentation was correct and all that stuff. And and me being in this business already had been in this business for about 40 years. I mean, all that stuff was just, second nature for me because I had developed those good habits, And
One thing that I saw, and it's kind of going down a rabbit hole, but when home inspections came into play, it really revolutionized the industry. It really started getting rid of the bad apples, the bad builders, and it's a pain in the butt, but I don't know how you can live without it, because without that third party checking out properties, inspecting properties, and there's something about third parties that don't have a horse in the race that you need on your team. You need those people who are working with you, who are going to shoot straight with you, and that's why home inspectors are so important. And it really changed the way we all do business. And the marginal operators a lot of them were washed out right then.
Well, a lot of people coming up and being, really broke into to doing a lot of work, especially commercial work,
Right.
in 1982, because I was a project manager for a downtown development company,
Right.
or Midtown, and we're building offices and converting those old fourplexes in the Montrose River Oaks to restaurants and stuff like that, and I really got the grip of how important city inspectors are.
Yeah.
Because they kept, we always pulled permits and we had blueprints and all that stuff, but the largest portion of the contractors don't do that.
One of the very first jobs we did, the first job we ever did, we hired a plumbing guy, licensed plumbing guy, and when the city inspector showed up, two things happened. When the city inspector showed up, he gave him a bottle of whiskey. I saw it because I was upstairs looking through a window, and I thought, and part of me is thinking, well, this is a good thing because he's got a relationship. And then I realized, wait a second, I'm hiring a guy to do a job, and if he's got to bribe a person to get the job done, well, then what's he doing for me? And I wouldn't say that on the air, except I saw it with my own eyes. Mm-hmm. And then later on, that same plumber went in there and we paid him because he got the final check off. When he got the final check off, we paid him. And when we went to go pull our occupancy permit, they said, no, our inspector's never been out there. And the guy that drove up in a City of Houston car. And so I just assumed he was an inspector. And it wasn't. It's probably his cousin or nephew or God knows who.
That he sent over
Yeah,
there.
so a plumber got to us twice on that job. And it's like, you know what? Even though the best intentions are out there, the system can be broke, you can be gotten to. and you just got to deal with reputable people. And if that plumber will steal from you, he's going to steal from anybody.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not the plumber, it's the person. You know?
Well, it's like, if you got a spouse and she cheats on you or he cheats on you, that's not new behavior.
Right.
It just showed up when you were there.
Yeah. No, and you were probably not paying attention. You probably weren't qualifying your partners,
Well,
your
that's
vendors.
that's why it's good to check people out before you get too
Right.
involved with them, and that's basically, you and I talk about that a lot. We're big paperwork guys. You
Right.
have an office, you have paperwork, you're driving paper all the time and documenting everything. And of course now, we do everything e-files a lot because we don't want all that paper stacking up.
Right.
And it's so much easier to go open up the computer or a thumb drive or something and find that than it is to dig around in the filing cabinet and find where did I stick it, right?
So, yeah, and then just take a step back. This is a real estate investor show for real estate investors by real estate investors. And we're going to talk about some mistakes and some things some good things we've done, some bad things during this show. We're going to talk about some gotchas that happen with real estate. Because we are talking about contractors, we learned firsthand that the people you have around you, the people that are working with you, those guys are your partners, and you need them, and they need you, and they need to be good. And like a partner, if you have a partner, a lot of times you have to educate them, or you have to be educated. You have to raise the bar for everybody to operate at a high level. That's what inspectors, when they pass that law that where the Texas Real Estate Commission took on property or home inspectors, that was to make sure people did things right. And those guys are very well trained. Typically, they usually know what they're talking about. Occasionally, they'll make mistakes, but for the most part, they're going to catch most things. And so when we decided to do this show, we knew that we wanted our partners to be front and forward. Our sponsors. We wanted them to be. We wanted to make sure that they were part of our team. We want them part of it. And if we get a bad apple and we get bad reports from people who are listening to us or people that are working with us, then we push them out. And if we get good reports, then we bring them to us.
Well, Hal held up a deal because he's trying to keep us on track. But I got to tell you, Ray.
He's an anti-rabbit hole.
Yeah. Well, Ray, I let Ray go down some of these rabbit holes because, listen, they're not really rabbit holes. Because our whole point, about talking about our vendors, is that we vetted them. I mean,
right.
To a large degree, I'd say 90% of them are people that we've known for 15 or 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And we got on the radio, and Ray got me on the show, and he said, man, we need vendors to help support our show. But they're more than just financial support.
Right.
Because we use them, and we want you guys to use them because they've been vetted. A big portion of what we do here is that, naturally we want to make money. Everybody wants to make money.
Right.
But at the same time, we really enjoy helping other people. Because we know that it's a big circle. It always comes back to us.
It is a big circle. And a lot of people don't see that. They haven't gone the full circle many, many times. And Pat and I both probably done about 1,000 rehabs. And it doesn't even seem possible. But then I started thinking back, and it's like, we've never stopped rehabbing. For 38 years, we've never stopped rehabbing. We've always right now I've got 4 crews working today. And it's like, it never stops. And these guys, one day you're cussing them out, and the next day you're begging them to have mercy and save your butt because you're past a deadline. You promised the property. And you can't
for
deliver.
3 or 4 years, I didn't really do rehabs, but I was a production manager for an international trade show company.
Yeah.
So I'm building like a house in 3 weeks that you set up on a showroom floor somewhere in New York or whatever,
right,
out of crates. And bolt it all together, right? And everything has to go together. These things are huge. It costs $180,000, $200,000 a piece to produce, right? And then we have to take them apart and put them back in crates and send them somewhere else. So it's like building a house that's in pieces. It's all the same.
When you say the exhibit thing, I've got a guy working for me was a boilermaker in the Navy, and I didn't know what that was at first. But a boilermaker, when they take these big ships out to sea, they got to make their own stuff. If something breaks, they got to make it.
They're engineers.
And I've seen this guy make things on the job site that I didn't know a human being could make, like with his hands and a few crude tools. And you talking about the exhibit kind of reminded me of that. And when I saw him do that the first time, I thought that saying that says, "You've done so much with so little, you can do anything with nothing." With exhibits, it's got to be the same thing, because you're literally creating an image. You're not building a house, you're creating the picture of a house, and you've got to make people think it's a house, and you got to make sure it doesn't fall on them like you've had the experience.
Yeah, well, that's what happened to me. You know, I had a 2,000-pound display fall on me, and that's what put me out of that business.
Well, I got to know one thing. Did you make the display?
No, it was somebody else's. And of all things, we had our accountant out there helping, and, you know, he's kind of a klutz, and he knocked the whole thing over. And when it was falling, they said, "Pat, look out." And I turned around and it hits me, you know, about shoulder height. You know, it's already going down 2,000 pounds. Well, when you grab something like that, you can feel all the bones in your body breaking. So you just automatically, your computer, your brain is your fastest computer ever built. And it says fall. and so anyway, let's make a long story bearable. We want to get to our vendors real quick, but you know, what we talk about is our vendors. All right.
Right.
So let y'all know that, you know, this is a big part of what we do. First of all, I like to talk about the most important vendor we have, which is Hal Gailey with BioCity Techs. Hal's sitting over here. I told Hal on the phone this week, we were talking. I said, you know, I got to remember to mention you first, because, you know, we get to talking about this other stuff and we forget the most important person in our business really is sitting over there.
Yeah, it's what happens behind the scenes that make things happen.
Right.
You got to have an infrastructure. And with the radio and the video, you can't make that happen if somebody doesn't know how to make things happen.
Well, you know, I like to connect the dots everywhere I go, you know, with people I work with on my jobs, for instance. I always like to connect the electrician to the plumber, and the plumber to the HVAC guy, and the general contractor to all those guys. Everybody's connected. And when I go to the job site, let's say, for instance, I'm working for you and you're my new client, right?
Right.
And you decide, well, you know, I want to change this thing, you know. So I get there and I said, "Well, what's going on? Are you happy and everything?" He said, "Yeah, we had a problem." And I said, "Oh, what's the problem?" And he said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I talked to Tony. We've already fixed it." And that's the kind of people you want on your team, right?
Right.
And what I've taught my guys, if it's too much and you need to tell the customer, well, I need to, you know, charge a little bit more for that. You need to tell them what the price is, and they agree to it. As soon as you do, you write up a change order and you hand it to them so it's documented. And as soon as you do that change, you collect on it. Because I don't like, you know, being a general contractor, I always say people that do paperwork win. People that lose don't do paperwork. And that's the same with contractors, or if you're an investor, especially if you're an investor.
Right.
And I learned as a contractor, when I'm doing work and someone had a change, I did a change order and I handed it to them, and then that change was going to happen right then because we were changing things, right? So I would collect on that change, because at the end of the job, they're not thinking about all those changes they're made. They're thinking about that bottom line, which is $3,000 they owe you on that last check.
Right.
And they forget about those 6 things that they added to the job. So I teach my contractors to do the same thing, so there's no surprises, because the rub is always at the end of the job when you got to write that last check, right? So there's a lot of things to construction that, you know, being a grizzled veteran, I have to teach my contractors the same as I have to teach my clients, okay?
Yeah, a change order is, it's one of those things where people's memories change if they don't have it written down and agreed to. And that's why all change orders need to be in writing, not just for the person paying the bill, but for the person trying to make the job happen the way it's supposed to. And so by having it in writing, having it clear what it's supposed to be, it's just a real critical part. And people's memory changes, so you need to write things down. And it's not really to keep people honest. It's just so people can remember right.
Well, it's called professionalism, really.
Right.
And you know, when I'm a consultant, so my business is I'm one of the vendors too. Even though I'm a part of this company, I'm also a vendor. I'm residential rehab consulting. I consult clients and I manage their projects. And the thing that I do is I educate my clients to be better investors, to be
Right.
better business people.
Be better partners because
That's
your
right,
contractors
exactly.
are your partners.
Well, and the
You take care-
contractors are their partners now,
Right.
because these guys that I tell them, I said, look, you can hire whoever you want to, but I guarantee you, if you let my guys come in here and give you a price, because my price is set. I mean, if I tell you it's going to be $6,000 to run the project, that's it. If there's a markup for changes, you don't pay me; you pay direct to the contractor.
Right.
And what I do is I facilitate that so that y'all both stay on the same page. And at the end of the job, I guarantee you, everybody will be friends and you'll call me back. I have people that call me 10, 15 years back, still call me about things. So the idea is to build a relationship and maintain that relationship. So real quick, I'm going to talk about Hal. You got to have Hal in your toolkit. Even if you're just a homeowner, you're listening to this show, go to our website at massivepassiveshow.com, and you can get our vendor list, and Hal Gailey with Bile City, Texas on there. And you need to put him down deep in your wallet, because someday you're going to get a virus or something's going to happen to your computer, and you're going to need him. And his pricing is great.
I don't think you can be in the real estate business without a good understanding of how computers work. In fact, you and I were talking earlier about just the systems and the processes, and how even though you can put whatever business you're in, the systems and processes that you follow and what platforms and tools you use are imperative for getting things done. Nothing is straightforward or simple. We were just talking about like lead management, and just having a reliable computer that will get that done, understanding how those systems work together. When that goes down, you're down.
Right.
So you need somebody to be able to dial into your computer or do whatever to just get in there.
Forget about our 4 minutes on our vendors. We can't do that. I mean, right?
Well, if James was here, I'm sure we could, because they'd be hitting you.
He's fuming at the bit.
me.
He's probably doing that right now if he's listening. But I tell you,
Yeah, I can hear him cussing right now in my ear.
you know, Ray, I work across from Ray and on this show. I mean, we're looking at each other, and while he's talking, he's grinning. I mean, because this is fun stuff for us.
Right.
So real quick, I'm going to run through the sponsors, because we have someone waiting, which is Lucas Daniel Went at Lucas Cedar. He's a project manager over there, runs the shop. And but real quick, I'd like to talk about the Owner Finance Company, and the Owner Finance Network is great. If you're in this business and you're flipping houses, you need to have multiple exit strategies, right, Ray?
Mm-hmm.
You hold some, you flip some, and when you're flipping them, you can do an owner finance, which gives you that passive income, right, for the next 15, 20, 30 years, however you set that AM up for, right?
Yeah, and we consider that holding.
Yeah,
so
that's
even
holding.
though it's technically flipping, it's not, because you have that income stream, and anything that creates a long-term income stream, I put that under the category.
Absolutely. And you know, you're getting like 8.5%, 9%, 9.5% interest, right?
Right.
Over 15, 20, 30 years, however that's set up, and you're getting a big down payment, which generally a lot of times covers most of your construction costs.
Right.
And so you have this passive income that comes in for the next 15 years, but you don't have to replace the roof and you don't have to fix the plumbing, because you're selling it to an owner, okay?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of an owner finance.
It's a lot of power right there. A lot
Absolutely.
of people don't understand.
A lot of power. And also, real quick, we're doing this rehab. We did a video yesterday, and how record the video. And in that video, we talked about what's going on in this house. It's a fire job. We have like 4 major crews. We have a roofer framer that did all of the replacement of the fire damaged wood. And there's still a little bit of that in there, because we didn't really see it all till we start getting all the rest of the sheetrock out, right?
Yeah,
And
that's the way it is with fire.
So a lot of that can still be fixed before we re-rock it, okay? The other thing is we have an electrician, and he rebuilt the service. This house had gas in it. I'm being the consultant to my client. I said, look, you got a rent house. It's got gas. The fire wasn't caused by the gas, but the gas was a contributing factor to the fire being worse. So why don't we just eliminate all the gas, since we got to replace the furnace and the water heater and all this stuff, and let's just make this house all electric, which will cut down on your insurance liability. And he said, man, I'm all for that. So we converted the house to all electrical. So we got an electrician involved. There is some plumbing, but my guy can do the most of the plumbing, because it's just a few pipes around where the water heater was at, and a few things like that where the fire got. then we also have an HVAC because we're pulling out all the HVAC and
Right.
replacing it, because when you got fire like that, and then the other thing is we're going back with all electric, and it was a gas furnace, but it was old. So we're pulling all that and we're putting a whole new system in. And so we got 4 major contractors that are working on this job. And those guys are all vetted contractors on our vendor list. So if you go to massivepassiveshow.com, not only do you get those, but you get our events, right, Ray?
Yeah.
And you want to talk about those real quick? What's going on?
Did you have somebody on the phone?
Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. I forgot. Is he not there anymore?
No, we're not on the phone yet.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, we got Lucas Cedar calling in. Oh, yeah, it's a few minutes yet. And that's Daniel. So while we're waiting on him, why don't you skip over to...
Well, one thing I just want to tag into something you're saying. To put it in terms I think anybody on the phone can understand if you've done this or on the radio, is everybody thinks things are easy until they actually do them. And then they realize, oh my God, this is like, and I can't tell you how many properties I've bought because somebody gets halfway through, they either run out of money, the contractors screw them over, they made bad decisions, they can't market it. You do any of those things wrong and it just spells disaster.
And a few of those things that still happen to you occasionally.
Oh, continuously.
Because there's so much going on and you're jiggling things all the time,
What I do on our cruise is because it's on our properties. I just have a company policy that I watch the jobs because I want to go out there, because when the guys make mistakes, we're either not delivering the product right, or they're spending thousands of dollars needlessly, or they're cutting corners. So, and it's an excuse for me to get out there. It's like being a manager at a restaurant. If you're out there serving the clients, serving the tables and waiting the tables yourself, you're going to know if your waiters and waitresses are doing what they're supposed to. You're going to know if your cooks are doing what they're supposed to.
Absolutely. I wore that hat for a couple of years.
So I made an intentional decision to just go out there, because then I can see where the rubber meets the road. And
Oh, he's ready?
yeah, I can see where the rubber meets the road. Just give us 1 minute. I just want to finish this one.
I told him it would be in the range.
So like the painting thing, if you take that for example, painting seems simple, and I'll bet you Pat and I could talk 3 hours, never say the same thing twice, just on the right way to do paint, how paint's typically done wrong, your choices and options with paint. It is so sophisticated, and it's not simple. And a lot, like you were talking about those contractors, there's nothing simple about electrical. It's getting more and more complicated every day. The code's changing. Literally, it changes every time I turn around. There's new code.
Absolutely.
And whether it's plumbing, electrical, framing, just like you were talking in the house yesterday about, hey, they've got a fire block between the garage and
Painting
the
is the
house.
most underestimated craft there is.
Right.
I mean, it is. I mean,
Well,
a good painter knows so much more.
But what I'm saying, Pat, it's every trade.
Right.
Every trade. And if your guys aren't staying up on it, they're going to let you down. And then you're not, when that home inspector comes out and says something's wrong, or worse yet, somebody gets hurt in that house and your hands were on it. We can't go that route. So we've got to have good people that we're working with and talking to, and make sure they know the technical aspects of things.
And I tell you what, I've seen the guys know that stuff, but the investor try to shortcut things, and later something happened.
Right.
And guess who's on the firing line?
Right.
The investor, because then he has to hire an attorney because he's getting sued.
So one thing that Pat and I both have a common interest in, we didn't realize we had a common interest. I love making things out of wood. When I saw what a planer could do, it's like my whole world is like, you could do that with a planer. And then when I was a teenager, I bought a book on table saw techniques and how to build your own jigs. And I'm thinking, you can do this with wood. And
right.
We've got Lucas, right? Who do we got on the phone with us?
Yeah. This is Lucas Cedar. Now, Lucas Cedar, I got to give you a little follow up.
Okay.
Mike Repsol is one of the owners of Lucas Cedar. I met Mike 7 or 8 years ago through my good friend and my ex-boss Johnny Hayes at Chet Lending, right? Mm-hmm. And they're good friends, and they were in the insurance business together. They were salesmen, and Mike was really kind of like Johnny's boss. And Mike is a real entrepreneur. I mean, he is as I don't know, I wish I could say the word, but when you get to be 72, some words kind of are still in your brain, but you can't say them,
Well, sometimes they slip out of your mouth, Pat. I've heard it. I know.
Yeah, but they're bad words. Hal's over there telling me, it's okay, Pat, we're going to be on the air in a few minutes, so watch what you say.
He didn't say that to me.
Well, because you're not like me. Ray does say some bad words every now and then, but he really finds a better spot to say them than I do. But it's just old contractor stuff. You got to be careful.
It's a sailor.
Yeah, sailor.
You're a natural sailor.
Well, you were a sailor and I was in the Army. It's kind of the same. But anyway, Lucas Cedar. Let's get to Lucas and let's talk to Daniel real quick.
All right, hand is up.
Daniel, are you on?
I am.
Okay, I want to get you to speak up. Act like you're asking for a drink. I always tell Ray, I said, Ray's real quiet until we get in the bar, and then he's the guy you can hear all the way across the room. But
give me a couple beers. I have a lot to say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember one time I was doing to make another long story bearable. Is I was doing I was asked to talk about lead poisoning, right? Because I was a certified lead inspector, and one of my bosses was there, and he said, "Okay, Pat, tell us something about lead." And I said, "Well, one of the side effects of lead is it reduces your sex drive," which Johnny can testify to that. And of course, Johnny's pretty light on his feet, and he said, "Yeah, after I've had 6 beers and it's midnight." But listen, we want to talk to you real quick about Lucas Cedar. Mike and I go way back, and I actually had to learn things by knowing Mike about Lucas Cedar. Y'all not only sell cedar, but you also mill cedar, right?
We do.
And you'll talk a little bit about that, how you mill lumber for certain specs and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, so probably 85 or 90% of our business is just selling cedar. We are probably one of the largest cedar dealers in probably most of all Texas.
Can we turn his volume up? Go ahead. We're trying to get you louder.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
That's good. You're better
You
now.
good?
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
And so we just stock a lot of cedar, everything from 1x4s all the way up to 8x8 timbers, larger stuff, and a lot of different pattern stocks. And the milling happened because we used to outsource a lot of our common patterns, an old 105s and double 105s, 117 patterns, things like that you couldn't find around anymore, and especially in cedar. And so we used to outsource all that, and the companies that would do that for us just didn't take the pride and the care in it that we wanted to. And so we bought a couple machines and started doing that stuff ourselves, and it's grown. And what we try to do is the small jobs that people can't go out. You're not buying thousands and thousands of feet, but somebody's trying to make a repair.
How about brick mold? Can
pattern.
y'all make brick mold off of a spec, or do y'all have some knives in a machine to make brick mold for like around windows and all that?
We do. We have a basic pattern, and if our pattern's close enough, then that's great. And if it's not, then we have the ability to make those knives or create those patterns exactly to what you would need.
Daniel, so you said 105 siding, and so my experience with 105 siding, it's pine. So you mill other stuff besides cedar, right?
Correct, but we actually make in stock the 105 pattern in cedar.
Well, like 105,
we can use other products.
Like 105 is a perfect example, and cedar is a perfect example. It's like whenever that house was built, it had a different size 105 or a different size cedar. Do you have the ability to match those cedars up with, because a lot of times we're just doing small little repairs.
There's 7 1/4 or 5 1/4, right? There's
Right.
2 sizes.
Well, I mean, even the 3/4, you take the 3/4 cedar, which is 1x, that 1x's changed over time.
Oh yeah, and I want to mention that too, because talking to Daniel, I got a little bit more information, and I kind of pulled it out of him that Mike didn't give me. Y'all carry 3/4 inch cedar, right? The thickness. So if someone wants a higher end fence, will last much longer than that that cedar's gotten so thin you about read a newspaper through it, right?
And it bends.
Oh yeah,
It bends.
bends and warps and all that. But that 3/4 inch board, which I used to buy a lot of my wood from Mono because they still carry that 3/4 inch board. They don't do that anymore. But y'all stock that, right, Daniel?
Yeah, so the pickets and the regular, boards are a little different animals, but in the regular boards, that new nominal is 11/16. It's right at 3/4 inch on all the 1x material. When you get to pickets, that normal is a 5/8.
Right.
And so we still stock a 3/4 inch picket, and we stock the regular 1x material, but we also have the ability to custom cut rough cedar, in the full 1-inch material, like if you're making a repair that's 25 or 30 years old, and that 1x4 is still a 1x4.
That's a really good.
We
And
can still do that as well.
And you can do that with other stuff too, right? I mean,
Sure.
like the 105 siding. The 105 siding changed over time. So if we end up with a 105 siding that we can't match up, then you can match that up.
Well, and what y'all are using that 105 siding for is a lot of these high-end houses now, even though they have hardy, they use cedar to do an accent area, like in an entryway or something like that, right? Because I'm seeing that,
Correct.
I live in East End and close to downtown Houston. Of course, my old neighborhood is changing fast, and I see these houses that are tearing down an old house and they're putting up a $1 million house, and there's a lot of cedar in spots like under the underhangs and special places because it really is classy.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that. So that's really the kind of the part of the industry that y'all are targeting with those kind of materials, right, Daniel?
Correct. And so, I'd say the majority of our business is all custom homes and custom, work like that. It's not necessarily the track.
So a lot of
Homes,
restaurants and commercial buildings and stuff, they're doing accents on the interior of their building, like a lot in office spaces and all. They really like calling you guys and using you, right?
Correct.
So, but it seems like you're a natural for the repair industry too, because a lot of times we're trying to match up, 90% of the material we have, and we're good 10% is spoiled or runt. So y'all can help us in that regard.
Sure, we can match those old profiles and things that.
And now
that you just can't
you guys
find.
aren't open on
Now
weekends,
he used
right?
a technical term, so you have to tell him what that technical term
Oh.
is, Pat. He used the word profile, so tell him.
Profile. Yeah, let's talk about a profile. Profiles, matter of fact, there's a profile chart that's pretty universal. And when he said 105 siding, that's a siding that has, one thing is it's a tongue and groove. So in other words, each piece fits on the other piece. And then like it's got a male female to
Right.
it. And then the top of it has like a little swoop to it. And that's called 105. And then you have number 117. You know what that is, right? That traditionally we
yes.
call it shiplap, right?
Right.
Because it looks like the side of a boat. And can y'all cut that too in cedar?
We do, and with Chip and Joanna, shiplap became real popular, and we sell a lot of shiplap now because of that. We manufacture a lot of shiplap because of that.
Well, that's great. That's great information. And you can get Lucas Cedar off of massivepassiveshow.com. And matter of fact, Daniel, thank God, he knows how to use Facebook. So I sent you the links to the Facebook pages, right? You have those?
I have them, yes. I don't get on there. I try to stay off of there, to be honest. But
Well, if you don't advertise, what I want you to do is make sure you send us information so we can post it for you, because you are a very important vendor to this business.
Yeah, more important than most people realize. They don't know that they have that option until they walk into a place and say, I had that trim and I couldn't match it up, so I replaced all the trim. With
Right.
9 times out of 10,
Right.
a place like Daniel's can make it.
Right.
And it's a lot
Sure.
cheaper to make a
Well,
few expensive feet.
Let me tell you, since y'all have your own cutters, so basically what you could do is someone that brought you a piece of molding, y'all could send it out and get the teeth made, right? The blades, the knives, and then y'all can mill all that wood for them, right?
I actually do that. We do that ourselves.
So you make the knives yourself there, right?
Correct.
Oh God, I'm so glad I asked you that question because I Circle Saw is over off of Ella, right, in 610, and I've dealt business
Right.
with Circle Saw and all those guys since they were little bitty and I was little bitty. We all know each other, and whenever I'd do a house in the Heights and they had all these weird moldings, right, that are 100 years old, I would take a piece in there and I'd get Randy to make the knives, right, and it. And he wouldn't charge me for the knife. The knife cost like $150 to make it. And then, but what he'd do, he'd keep the knife, right? And then I'd cut all the trim to the right width, and then he'd run it all for me. So I get a whole house full of trim that matched the existing exactly. And then he would have the knife because someone later would come in that was working in that area and said, Randy, I got this weird problem. He said, don't worry about it. I made a knife for Pat and I still have it and I can make all the molding you want. If you'll just cut it to size for me, we'll run it. And what Randy would do, he'd charge you a great price. And then because he was using the money to buy food for the deer feeder, right? And to spend on the deer lease. So there's
Now that's a rabbit hole.
well, listen,
That's
but
for
listen,
sure a rabbit hole.
the reason
If
I'm
you're
telling you all
talking
that
about
stuff,
deer.
that's why you want to call me and call Ray because we have been in this business forever. We know if he doesn't know somebody, I know him, and if I don't know somebody, he knows them, and that's the beauty of working with us.
Before we let him go, I want to ask him one question because he brought up about the shiplap and how that became popular, and what I just wonder how many customers are getting that are doing exactly what we're doing. And what we do is if we buy a high-end house, we'll take that foyer or we'll take that closet or we'll do something and we'll throw in some wood that has some real quality and uniqueness to it that you don't see every day.
Right.
Do you get a lot of business that comes from that kind of mindset where people are trying to add that little extra
Ambiance.
attractiveness to the house, that accent wall?
We do, and that's bigger builders as well as just individuals that come in that say they just want to do an accent wall in a bedroom or in their foyer, like you say, where they just want to do something a little bit different, and that's where the shiplap and the some of those different pattern come in, and people just want to put that one wall in, and it to really, like you said, enhance the look and the value.
Yeah, when I was doing work all the time, I mean, as a worker, as a contractor, I used to keep a molding chart in my wood shop so I could just go in automatically and identify it.
Right.
Because I was having to show my carpenters, what I was talking about.
Yeah, and you got to put a name on it, and every one of those things has a weird name to
It has a name and a number.
Yeah.
And that number is actually the name.
Right.
Believe it or not, if it says, 121, that's not just
Right.
something that says, well, we're lining everything out from 1 to 100, right?
Right.
That 121 actually says what it is. So actually, if you're doing these moldings a lot, you learn those numbers, right, Daniel?
Yeah, you do. They there's a lot of them though.
He said that with a sigh, like, "Oh my God, don't put me on the spot and ask me about
Don't
one."
quiz
No, I
me.
could hear the frustration
Don't
in his
test me on
voice. It was like, well, Daniel, thank you for calling
thanks
in.
for calling
and
in.
thank you for supporting us. And we're going to do everything to support you because you're such an important part to this business and to making taking an average product and making it great.
Yeah, I mean, you're not just important to us. You're important to every person that listens to the show and every person that we help along our path, and we've got a lot of those.
Right.
So, I mean, like, for instance, you're going to do the gotchas at our event coming up, right?
Yeah, and
right?
we're going to talk about a few just to give them a flavor of that. Okay, well, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Daniel. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you guys, appreciate it.
Okay, have a great day.
Okay.
Y'all too.
You know something Daniel said, and I need you, since you're in charge of talking to the sponsors, I've done business. I'm going to say their name because these guys just went out of their way to help me multiple times, and they're not an official sponsor, but if you have a need for what these people do, and it reminded me so much of what Daniel's doing, is there's a place in Pasadena called Harmony Glass, and they basically help people do, I can't see that, but needs to be more grande. But Harmony Glass basically does what they do. If there's a glass made, they stock it. And just if you ever want a special glass for a house or do something special as a contractor or as a rehabber, They're wonderful. You need to reach out to those guys because they've always been over backwards to help me. And just if you think you want a special piece of glass, you will totally be discouraged the minute you get online and you try to find it, because when they move glass, they got to build a crate for it. So that thing that you'd spend 20 or 30 minutes or $20 or $30 for, you're going to pay $150 because they got to build a damn crate for it. Whereas Harmony Glass has it in stock. They do lead glass and all that stuff.
James laid out our program, and we totally blowing him away. But I've got to tell Ray to move on because we got to talk about the Alamo Rio San Antonio that's coming up.
Yeah.
We have the Houston Alamo Rio. We named them both the same because it was more convenient for us.
It's the same group.
It's the same group.
Right.
And also, Robin Thompson's going to be speaking at the Alamo Rio in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And we've got a bus tour coming up and some other stuff. We only have about 10 minutes left, so I'm gonna turn this over to Ray, and I'm gonna stay out of it so he can get through this litany of things that are coming up. And y'all need to plug in.
Where do I turn his mic off?
Yeah, where do I turn him off at now, right? Because he's using up my time. Okay, Ray, have at it.
Well, one of the important things is we moved the bus tour to December 4th, and you can go to massivepassiveshow.com, and when we do that bus tour, we're going to look at properties we're working on. You're going to have Pat go in there, and we'll rotate the audience, so half the group will go with Pat, half the group will go with me. And the group that goes with Pat, he'll talk about construction techniques, how this is done, why it's done like this. The group that goes with me will talk about investing and what an investor needs to look for and what we can do to add value, what things not to do, how to do them right. And then we'll rotate. So then Pat's group will come to me, and then I'll tell you why Pat's wrong on everything he said. No.
We had a good conversation about that already.
No, it won't be like that. You'll be amazed how people who've been in this business generally have the same answer.
Yeah.
But there are different ways of looking at things. So a lot of times there's not a right or wrong. But the bus tour will be exciting. At the end of the bus tour, you'll be able to figure out within about 10% what it costs to rehab anything. Well, maybe not anything, but most things you'll be able to figure out. And you need that, whether you're a wholesaler or a flipper or a buy and hold guy.
Wholesalers really need it.
Yeah, and they don't know, so they don't say. And also they don't negotiate as good as they need to because they think, oh, it's a $5,000 repair, and it really is a $20,000 repair. And so you need to have ammunition to get better offers, better deals, and to just do a better job and be more successful. I used to train a
lot of those people, and they'd bring me a good deal,
Yeah. So that's going to be on December 4th. We have our general meeting in Houston coming up, which is mostly for this audience, but that's going to be, I think, November, what day is that?
13th.
November 13th.
Second Saturday of every month.
And we're going to have several topics, but the main topic is going to be just the down and dirty on wholesaling and flipping. Now, our main focus is figuring out how to buy and hold, but you have to understand the wholesale and flipping business to be successful because there's really three legs to that stool. It's wholesaling, it's flipping, and it's buying and holding. And
a lot of times you have to be a wholesaler to build up some cash revenue to do other stuff, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it doesn't hurt to be a wholesaler. You just don't want to live in the wholesale world.
That's right.
That's not a wholesale is just a part of what you need to do. But to me, the golden goose is the buy and hold. So you got to figure out how to buy and hold, and knowing how wholesalers work or knowing how some basic techniques in wholesaling is very, very important. Same with flipping. A flipper is somebody that's got to put something in production or that can be put in production. They've got to do it on a budget. They've got to make money just like a builder. And so flipping is really important. And there's a lot of buy and hold people that never make it to the buy and hold stage because they never get to the production stage because they don't know how to fix things up. So all these things have some very common traits to them.
They're all connected.
Yeah, they're all connected, and they have common traits, and we've got to learn what those common traits are. One of the things James asked us to talk about, and this is something we'll talk a little bit about in our next meeting, is I started out years ago making a chart on 21 tips, tricks, and gotchas. And usually it was because of something I screwed up on. And so or something, just like we're talking with Lucas Cedar, you learn that, hey, I can go and get that one piece milled. I can literally save thousands of dollars because I don't have to tear all this other stuff off that I can't match. And then you find out, oh, that's a trick. That's a trick. And so I came up with 21 tips, tricks, and gotchas. I'm really up to about 35 now, but we started out with 21. And James asked us to talk about this. And this is something when we're looking at deals that we really want to try to get right. And I just named 4 or 5 of these, Pat, and let's pick any one of these you want. We'll talk about them. In fact, one's kind
Well,
of...
don't put me on the spot.
Well, putting you on the spot that involves you talking is that's not possible. One of the things, some of the things that when we're looking at properties we want to be mindful of is the drainage, foundation, mold, external forces that affect it. And another thing that I have, it's one of the new ones that was after the 21 because I realized how important it is doing the scope of work right. And so, because that's a gotcha. If you don't do your scope of work, you're talking about change orders.
Paperwork.
Yeah. If you don't do that scope of work right and you don't give it the respect that it deserves, your job will either fail. Absolutely. It will either fail or cost you thousands of dollars. And that's just how important the scope of work is.
If you're new in this business, it's going to wipe you out.
Yeah.
It'll be your first and last deal.
Yeah, so those are things, and like when we look at jobs, and this is part of the group of 35. If you go in the bus tour, we'll make sure you get 2 important handouts. There's going to be more. We'll show how to do comps and all that. It's a 1-day affair, and it's 9 to 10 hours.
Pretty intense.
But a couple of handouts we're going to do is the 21, but technically more. Tips, tricks, and gotchas. The other thing that we'll give out a handout is how to evaluate your contractor, whether he's a plumber. We'll have specific questions that you can ask your plumber to say, like, hey, what's the answer to this question? What's the answer to this question? So there's 5 to 7 questions, and then we'll tell you what those answers are. We'll do that as a handout in many of the different trades, and you can quickly evaluate that plumber, that electrician, the carpenter, the tree guy, the whatever it is, the foundation guy. And by asking those questions, you'll know, hey, am I dealing with somebody that just woke up yesterday and said he's in the tree business? You need to know that before he cuts that tree down and it falls on top of your house.
Just named some more vendors that we have. Tree guys, foundation. I mean, we just go on and on, but we only have an hour, right?
Yeah. Well, these guys are important because when you hire the wrong guy, you lose money. You will absolutely lose money. So, in fact, we now do criminal checks on everybody we hire. If they're new, it's just too easy now to do criminal checks, so we just do it.
Well, just like we got a new vendor, Junk King, right?
Right.
And he's got guys that he's already vetted that he knows are not criminals. So they're going to come in your house and they're going to remove junk or furniture or whatever. You don't want just somebody bringing in somebody that just hired last week and you have no history of them.
And if you hire like a GC and then he's hiring his guys at Home Depot, he's not checking his guys out. And you were letting that guy in your house, and what will happen is a week later, that guy will be gone because he won't work out, and the week after that, your air conditioner will be stolen. And he'll know when you come and go. So, one of the things is on the scope of work, we just want to, that's on my gotcha list. That scope of work is so important because if you don't have a clear plan up front, you should literally, before you even start, you should have a clear plan. In fact, I'm breaking one of my own rules as we speak today. And this afternoon, I've got to sit down with guys. They finished the outside of a house. We've got to sit down with those guys and go through the scope of work, which is going to take a solid 2 hours. They gave a proposal, an estimate. So now I'm going to go through the scope of work with them. We're going to nail down the prices. We're going to nail down the completion date. We're going to nail down what happens if they don't finish. It's going to be very detailed. And the more detailed it is, the better off we are. Mm-hmm. And the other thing will happen when you do a scope of work, you'll realize that let's say you got to do 100 things. You'll realize there's 4 or 5 things you don't have the answer to. And that's the kiss of death. not knowing what the answers to those 4 or 5 things. And for example, we spent a lot of time talking to Lucas Cedar today. What if you have that brick mold that was made 42 years ago, or they stopped making it 42 years ago? Well, so you've got to you got to be able to reach out to your support team and say, how do I get that brick mold? Do I have to replace all the brick mold on the house? Do I have to replace the fascia that's a special type cedar that I can't match up anywhere else? And you got to know those answers.
Well, if you're buying a new house, I guarantee you, there's probably a lot of finger joint wood in that house, that exterior, and I guarantee you, in 5 or 6 years, you're going to be replacing anything that's close to ground contact.
Yeah. So finger joint is what they do is they'll take they'll take an 8-foot, what you think is an 8-foot piece of wood, and they'll make it out of 8 1-foot pieces of wood with finger joints, and then they'll glue it together. And although there's probably some good places to use finger joint, and it's very cheap compared to
interior it's fine, but exterior is no bueno.
Yeah. If it's in a wind surface,
I can't tell how many feet of
it's just
finger
like
joint wood.
People put the MDF as window stools.
Oh yeah.
And you get a lot of condensation coming down on that window stool. The next thing you know, it's swelling up. But MDF on a closet shelf, properly supported, might be a whole lot better, because when you paint MDF
in a protected environment,
and you paint MDF, it looks like glass.
Well, let's get on here. We got to talk about our stuff coming up, Ray. I got to keep.
Well, we did. We got the
bus tour on the 4th, right?
Yeah, and our next in-person meeting is November 13th, right?
For Houston.
It's 1001 South.
West Loop South.
West Loop South on the 7th floor. And
no, on the 5th floor.
Oh, the
parking's on the 7th floor.
Yeah, the parking
garage. It's kind of confusing. You park on the 7th floor, but it's almost even with the 5th floor, right?
Yeah, walk across.
Those floors aren't the same height between the garage.
Yeah, because it's built next to the bio, so the first floor is really not the first floor.
Right. Yeah, but you just walk across there and you go in on the 7th, get on the 5th. If you park on the 7th, just try to walk straight across.
We got signs, so we'll direct you right to the room.
Yeah, but we have a good turnout if you get there early enough. There's breakfast tacos and drinks provided.
Tacos are great.
But we try to eat those breakfast tacos before you get there. So if you're late, you lose.
Yeah, you want to make sure you get there, because we got like 8 or 9 volunteers now, and they're all going to get a breakfast taco.
Yeah.
They're really good. One of our volunteers, Nikki, her brother owns a restaurant. We had him on last Saturday here to talk about his restaurant. So y'all come and get breakfast with us and network for the first hour, right, Ray?
Yeah. And go to Massive Passive Show, and we'll see you, I guess, on next week on the radio show, right?
Yeah. Great. Thanks a lot, guys. Come back and see us. Well, we got it all in. Thank God. Did we get it all in? Pretty close, right?